everybody, for part 2 of our last discussion of Bigfoot and aliens and all that fun stuff.
We're back. It feels like we were just here.
I know.
Right.
We all had to take showers.
Yeah.
Washed our clothes so we can put them back on.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Yeah.
So the last video, we talked about Bigfoot and a little bit of alien stuff, and it's a subject that we enjoy and we've spent countless hours throughout the years talking about. And,
Yeah.
Watching documentaries.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm learning more about your knowledge base of it, Eric.
Yeah.
Because we've talked a little bit because we did the boat investigation out on Beaver Lake that one time.
Yeah, we did.
Which I'm looking forward to doing that again. We talked about doing that again.
So that is something we've discussed.
Yeah.
We do another podcast down in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
And we've kind of discussed about us going out when we all three went out on the boat.
Yeah.
And there's so many other, not urban legends, but sightings and stuff around Beaver Lake.
Yeah.
That we want us three to get back out there and investigate. And I know a few more spots that people have recently drowned.
Yeah.
And it's like, my goal is to see, I want fresh stuff.
Yeah.
Seems like every time we investigate something, it's old.
Yeah.
But get something fresh. But that'll be happening this summer, is us going out there to investigate a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
it's a challenge doing that out in the outdoors, just because of all the sounds and things that you've got happening.
Right.
So it's definitely you don't see that very often.
No. I've never seen a video of people investigating on a boat on a lake. I've seen them like on old ships and stuff.
Yeah.
But not on open water. So I think that would be kind of a cool new thing to bring to the table.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And now that
we
have
had a good time
more,
that first time.
Yeah, it was fun.
More cameras we can set up.
Yeah.
Go out there on a nice warm evening.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Oh, it's almost boating season. It's almost boating season. I can't wait.
Yeah, when I went out to Pigeon Roost yesterday, there were boats out on the water, and I was like, man, that looks nice.
Friday, I was working out by the lake and passing by the bridge with somebody launching a boat. I'm just like, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to go camping. I'm ready to get back outdoors.
Yeah.
Outdoors where Sasquatch is.
Yep.
So I can see him.
You know, there's something we talked about with the other project. In fact, and it was a little surprising to me. Are you familiar with the Dogman cryptid?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have what was traditionally referred to as the Michigan Dogman, and then also there were sightings of something that sounded similar, if not the same kind of thing, in Wisconsin. They talked about the werewolf of Wisconsin.
And the chupacabra.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chupacabra is a similar thing.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize until I started looking into it for something to discuss with the other project was there are a number of Dogman sightings in Arkansas.
Oh, really?
One of them not too far from Huntsville, so not too terribly far from us. And that kind of struck me as odd or interesting.
Yeah.
And basically, if you don't know, Dogman is something that people describe as like Bigfoot, but it has the head of a canine. It has the pointed ears, it has the long snout. People are seeing something that looks like
Barbra Streisand.
like Barbra Streisand, or a werewolf type thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of another interesting little cryptid out there.
Yeah, that's local.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Apparently there's local sightings. Yeah.
So back to Dogman. Sorry.
No. We can go in any direction you want. I just thought that was another interesting cryptid, and one that might be local. That would be fun to explore too.
When I was a kid, I had lived in Elm Springs. Our buddy Kevin came over, and we were just running back when we were kids. Like, your parents didn't know where you were.
No.
Like, you could just be gone all day. They had no idea like how far we actually traveled on our bikes.
Be home when the street lights come on.
Yeah.
Or check in. My parents check in.
So Kevin and I we're in this cow pasture in Elm Springs, and one of us, I don't remember who started it, but one of us picked up a rock and splatted a cow patty onto the other guy.
Uh-huh.
And then it became a war.
Yeah.
And so we're running around this field and picking stuff up and throwing rocks at these fresh cow pies and trying to splatter them on each other. And Kevin grabbed a stick and just smeared a bunch of it on the end of this stick. And he starts running after me with it. And Kevin ran faster than I did.
Yeah.
And I knew that. And so I was running and kind of looking backwards and didn't see the electric fence.
Oh.
And I'm at full speed. Hit that fence. And you know, for the time it takes to bend in and then repel you, that's a lot of shocks happening.
Yeah.
And it had me right in the midsection and on my chest. And I just kind of did like a WWE hit the ropes, but face first. Oh. And then Kevin was right there after I was on the ground going, smearing it all over me.
That's a real friend.
Never forgive him for that one.
That is a...
I grew up as an only child, so I didn't have brothers and sisters. I was just like, I look back on my childhood and like I think I probably romanticize it more than it actually was. But I always have these, like I have these cool like Huckleberry Finn type memories of just like exploring and not caring. You know, I've got hours to be outside, had property and, you know, a stream and, you know, we had my mom got me a keyboard, like a full 88 key keyboard. And it came in this big styrofoam packaging and all of that. And a buddy of mine and I decided that we were going to make a raft with all that styrofoam. Uh-huh. And so we strapped on this raft onto a big piece of plywood, all these pieces of foam, and took it to the creek behind our house. And it was in the springtime, and so it had rained a bunch, and so this creek was up, and we literally brought a little, you know, one of those little cheap Walmart tackle boxes. Both of us had a 1-pump Daisy BB gun and our fishing poles and like some snacks. And we got on this thing and we're like, we're just going to float down the creek and see what happens. Yeah. You know, like we haven't been all the way down there. Yeah. What's at the end? And so we get on this thing, we're floating down.
Motherfucker ends up in Mississippi.
We're floating down and having so much fun. We're watching like turtles in the creek and fishing and having a good time. And there was a spot where there was a bunch of tree debris that from a previous flood that had come through there. And so there's a bunch of trees all matted up on the side. And it made the passageway through that spot more narrow. And so you kind of go a little faster through there. And there was and we didn't see it until kind of the last minute because we were looking down at all the cool stuff in the crawdads in the stream and everything, and look up and we see there's an old fence that's going across the stream. Yeah. And it's right at like kind of at our level, so there was no getting under it really. And we're, you know, you have to make a decision. We're getting there. We can't stop. Yeah. All we got's fishing poles. Nobody thought to have a pole to like, you know, maneuver. So we're heading towards this thing, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna hold it and push off, and I'll bend it open, and you crawl through, and then you hold it, and I'll crawl through. Well, that didn't even close to work. Yeah.
It never does.
He let go and started floating away, and I was the one that had held it for him. And so I'm still on the fence. Yeah. Right? And so, and he's already, sorry. Yeah. And I'm like, God, I'm going to have to jump in the water. And I'm holding on to this fence. Well, like I said, it had rained, and so the ground was all saturated. And so the fence posts... They start doing this, just slowly kind of caving, and I could feel myself like I'm getting closer to the water. And now he's probably 20 feet away, and he goes, snake! And I was like, what a shitty thing to say. And so he's like, look. He goes, don't get in. He goes, climb up the fence. And this is like a high wire. There's no way I'm not going to climb up the fence to the bank. And I turn around and look, and there's like 8 cottonmouths, little babies, 10 feet away from me, all just kind of doing their thing. I don't know if you ever seen Lonesome Dove. You ever seen Lonesome Dove?
Yes.
Okay. I had recently seen Lonesome Dove.
Yeah.
And that scene where they're crossing the lake or the river, and that dude just gets eat to shit with those cottonmouths.
Because Dummy should have went with the rest of the fucking people.
Yeah. All I could see was that I'm gonna die today.
Yeah.
And they're all gonna attack me. And so pretty soon, like, I couldn't hold it anymore, and I just had to go for it.
Yeah.
And that was the scariest leap I think I've ever made in my entire life. And jumped in, and I must have swam like an Olympic genius.
Yeah.
Just to get to him. And while he's floating away and pointing and laughing at me hard.
See, that's a good friend.
Right? Like, I would imagine if I did have a brother, that's what my brother would have done.
Yeah.
That's fun. Lonesome Dove, boy, Gus was a pimp.
That whole movie. I love that movie.
You know, I have a similar float story.
No way.
It's ironic how similar it is, and it's one that happened to me, and this was while I was in college. I went to a school where I was on a trimester system. Actually, this was the end of high school, but summers I was at home. But
so you just try for most of the semester.
Yeah. Well, you try for one. But I had a buddy, and he and I went down to an access to the Saline River. We grew up in central Arkansas, and and it's one of those areas where it's like a swimming hole, you know. It's a part of the river where people can just go and swim and cool off. And so, Steel Bridge was another location, big steel bridge, but under it people would gather and just swim and hang out. And we had done that a couple of times, and we had big inner tubes, big floats. And my friend's like, let's just see where we can go.
Yeah.
So we floated, and we actually ended up at a park, but it was several miles away from where his truck was.
Yeah.
And so we had to get to a phone and call his dad to come get us. But, it was fun. It was a fun adventure and a fun few hours,
Yep.
And so I had told some other friends about it. And one Saturday morning, a buddy of mine named Brad is at my front door, knocking on the door. And I open it, and I'm like, "What? Hey, what's up?" Because these guys never just showed up. Usually, we would call and arrange to hang out or go swimming or something. And Brad said, "Let's go. We're floating today. Let's go. We're gonna do it. I want to do it. It sounded fun. Let's go." And I'm like, "Who's we? What are you?" And I look out, and there's 2 vehicles, and in one of them is Brad's car, and it's our buddy Philip. And Philip is the shortest of us, and he had just always been shorter than everybody else. And then in the other,
like a hobbit.
Yeah, not quite that short, but he's a short guy.
All right.
Brilliant guitar player. But in the other,
hobbits are good musicians.
Yeah, in the other car was our friend David and our friend Jeff. So, and they're all there. They're ready to go, and they're waiting. And this is the first I've heard of it. So I'm like, okay, well, let me get my tube or whatever, and so I go and I get my tube, and Jeff and David are like, we don't have anything to float on. We've got life jackets. And so we're like,
there you go.
We're like, okay, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
And so we went to we actually went, if I recall correctly, to the place where my friend and I got out of the water.
miles down.
Yeah. So where we were floating to from there, I had no idea.
Oh, yeah, this is
absolutely no
undiscovered
concept.
territory.
Yeah, no concept of where it was, where we would end up, how far it would
now
take
it's
us.
an adventure.
And I told them that. I said, okay, I don't know where we're going to end up. And they're all like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And so.
Famous last.
I
How many
love that.
times have you ever heard buddies say that to you?
Yeah. So there's 5 of us, okay?
Yeah.
And we get in the water, and first of all, it's freezing.
Oh, this is like a
Freezing
deliverance
cold.
story, isn't it?
It's so cold.
Yeah.
And I'm on my tube. Brad, I believe, is on an inflatable raft. Philip had a tube, if I recall correctly, and then David and Jeff are in life jackets, just kind of floating down the river, which was in itself fun because on occasion one of them would scream when their legs would brush like seaweed or water plants, and of course there's little fish here and there.
Sure.
So we're going along, and there's some parts of the river that are just still. You really have to row because there's no current. And then all of a sudden you'll hit a current and you'll book it. You'll be going for a while. But man, on either side of us, it's fenced off. There's fields and pastures.
Yeah.
There's no civilization.
Yeah.
You might see a farmhouse in the distance, and it's like that for hours. And on occasion,
you ended up in the Mississippi.
Well, on occasion, I get a little moment of panic where I'm like, okay, where the hell are we going?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
But you shake it off. You're with your buddies. You'll be
You're
fine.
having a good time.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
We get to this one part where the Saline River opened up really wide, real wide, and the current is pretty strong here. And there's a metal cable going across the river.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it was a way for people to move things or supplies across the river, for farming purposes or whatever, if they had to cross.
Sure.
But my friend Brad goes, "Hey, look at this," and he grabs hold of it, just like your fence.
Uh-huh.
And so the current's pulling him, and he's holding on to it. And I forget why. I kind of look away for a second, and then I hear Brad screaming a barrage of obscenities.
Yeah.
And calling Philip a bastard. And I look over, and Brad's hanging from this cable.
Yep.
His raft is going down river by itself.
He's done lost it.
Philip is on his inner tube, laughing so hard he can't move.
Know that feeling?
Yeah. So we're running out of time, and this is a long story, but I'll try to hit the high points. So Brad's hanging there, and Philip's laughing and floating on down, and then Philip actually gets caught up in a tree. And so he stalled. Brad stalled. I'm coming up.
Oh, your buddies are dropping left and right. You're about to be alone.
And
in
I
the wilderness.
start moving over to the bank, and because I don't want to get caught up in this business.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave them. So I float over and make my way over to the bank, and it was really hard because the current's strong.
Plus, you were laughing hard.
Yeah. And then David and Jeff get over to the bank with their life jackets that they had on. And so we're like, okay, what the hell do we do? Because we look down, and Philip's stuck in a tree, and Brad's hanging from this wire. And David's like, we're getting worried. We need to go back and try to get the cars and try to find a place to pick you guys up. And I said, okay, well, leave one of the life jackets. Take one in case you need it, but leave one, and I'll swim it over to Brad and get him out off that cable, and then we'll get Philip. And he's like, okay, and then we'll get the car. We'll walk back however long it takes and get the car and come back and pick you up. Great plan. Wonderful plan. And before David and Jeff leave, David yells to Brad, "Brad, don't go anywhere." And Brad, of course, screams, "Where the hell am I going to go?" And it took me a good 5 or 10 minutes to swim this life jacket to him with the current as strong as it was. And he grabs it, and we float over to the bank. We make our way down, and we get Philip and get him to the bank, and we walk back to where we had parted ways with David and Jeff. Everybody's safe and happy. We're good. And then Brad goes, "Well, let's go." I said, "Wait. They said they were going to come back."
Yeah.
We shouldn't leave.
Yeah.
And Brad's like, we'll catch up to them or we'll meet them on the way. It'll be fine. And I'm like, we don't know where they went. And
Brad's not a forward thinker, is he?
Brad's a great guy. He's a very smart guy, but Brad just...
In the moment, he was just caught up.
Brad was on an adventure.
Yeah.
And so we make our way up the bank. It was pretty steep to where the fence line was. And as we get there, nothing. No sign of a human being. It's pastures and woods as far as you can see. And so it's like, we don't know where we're going to go. So we just start walking. And we start walking. And we make our way down to this one area. And it's muddy. And you start kind of sinking. You know how wet mud is. You start kind of sinking in it. And then we sink up to here.
Well, that's not good.
And I'm start thinking about quicksand.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, if you grew up in the 80s, quicksand was everywhere.
Yeah, it was.
It was the major threat to people in the jungle. It was
scary
everywhere.
part of Princess Bride.
Yeah. And so, and it was solid enough to where you could put your hands on it and they wouldn't sink. But any kind of pressure and you would sink.
Yeah.
But you could feel the bottom, and we were kind of moving around. And it was funny to us. We started laughing so hard we couldn't breathe because Philip's a short guy.
Oh.
and Brad said he looks like Dorf. So
Dorf on golf.
And so we climb out of the quicksand. So it was mud, but we're covered in mud, red clay and mud.
Yeah.
And so we walk, and we're walking further, and
Skin's just getting softer and softer.
And we see this house, this farmhouse, and it had an advertisement on it for a business, and it said something about sour green. And Brad goes, my dad knows this guy. And I said, well, maybe we can knock on the door and make a phone call.
Yeah, sure he's going to let some...
And we're about to go up to the porch, and in between the steps on the porch, there's a Rottweiler. And it's growling and barking at us, and he's looking through the steps, and I'm like, well, maybe he's just under the house, and you know, so we can go up and still knock. And my friend Philip says, I'll go. And he walks up and he gets on the porch and he goes up to the door, and then he stops and he looks, and the Rottweiler's on the porch. Snarling and growling at him.
Oh, yeah.
And he just puts his hand down and calmly walks back to where we are. And he's like, I'm not knocking on the door. We need to get out of here. And so we walk down to the edge of the driveway there because there's a road off of it, and we'll follow the road, get to civilization. But the driveway, the weirdest things, of course, you expect to see a lot of rocks and stuff, but it was covered in broken safety glass, like from windshields and stuff, covered in it, like that light blue.
What?
Weird glass. It was weird. And we walked across that and made it okay. And we're walking down these streets through these neighborhoods. Don't know where the hell we are. And then we see another access to what we thought was the river. And so we cut through and we go back there and we go back to get in the river. And Brad puts on the life jacket, and I'm like, I don't see access to the river. This may just be a pond. And Brad goes from one end to the other, and it was just a pond. And then he comes all the way back. And we're all day in the hot sun. And I actually got in the pond just to wash the mud off of it.
Yeah.
But we keep walking, and then we're in the middle of the woods, and we see all these headstones.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like an abandoned cemetery. And I didn't know this at the time, but Saline County actually has an enormous number of abandoned cemeteries.
Oh.
And this was one of them. And there were headstones from the 1800s.
This is like a Stand By Me story.
It was crazy.
Want to see a dead body?
Speaking of Stand By Me, eventually we made it back to another inlet to the river. And so we get in it. And as we get in it, all of a sudden, Brad stops, and he holds back everybody, and you see a copperhead drop down into the water ahead of us.
Nope.
And so we wait for it to get a little down the river. We follow the river a bit and then get out again and find our way to the railroad tracks. And we know the tracks follow the river. And so we're walking along the tracks. Our feet were killing us because we're barefoot, no shoes. We found this old, like, weird flag that had been abandoned, and we tore it up and wrapped it around our feet so our feet wouldn't hurt as bad. And eventually we make it to another...
Not doing anything. Oh.
I've been recording for 45 seconds. That shit will be cut out, good fellas.
So we ran out of SD cards, so I've got to finish the story.
Yeah, just a little blunder.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll pick it up. So we find our way to some railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And we're walking along, and of course the train goes by at one point, noisy as hell. It was crazy. But then we see this white bird, and Brad's like, "Well, let's follow the white bird." And it was a big crane. And so every time we would get close to it, and we were getting back in the water.
Brad gets sidetracked easy.
Yeah. We were getting back in the water at times. And every time we get close to it, it would fly off, but just far enough to where it would land where we would see it.
Yeah.
So we kept following it, and we actually made our way back to another little park, swimming, boating area that was even further down from where we had started. And we get there, and we're there not long. We're just kind of sitting there, relaxing, trying to figure out what we're going to do next, and figure out a way to call somebody, because there were no cell phones at this point. And here come David and Jeff pulling up. Great. They get out, and they're pissed.
Oh, I would imagine.
Because they went all the way back to where they left us, and we weren't there. And what they had done was they went back to where we had left the cars and gotten our shoes and stuff and came back with them. And then they start walking to see if they can find us. And the one road that we found and went down, they went down a similar neighborhood. And they're absolutely pissed, just fuming that we're out there and they can't find us. And they walk all the way down this one road and didn't see us, and it was a dead end. And they had to come back. And at that point, from what they told us, David sits down in just irate anger, going, no, I'm not going any further. I'm done with it. No. And he's just adamant and ranting. And they look over, and there's a guy like watering his plants, just staring at him. And then he gets up without a word, and they walk off. But yeah, they were absolutely furious with us. But it was one heck of a weird adventure.
Oh yeah.
And when we had made our way to that weird abandoned cemetery, I'm like, well, let's keep moving. And Brad's like, well, we'll probably never be here again. Let's look around. Yeah. And he had a good point.
Yeah.
And so we kind of look around at the headstones and stuff, and just kind of took it in. And there was probably a matter of weeks later, we were doing just a short little film project as friends that we wanted to do. And this one guy said, hey, I know a cool place where we can film. And he took us down this dirt road. And a short ways off the dirt road, we saw that abandoned cemetery.
Oh, no way.
And Brad and I just looked at each other like, we're back.
What are the odds?
It
That's
was crazy.
funny.
But yeah, it's funny how similar your story is to that one.
Yeah.
So you guys got...
All right, well, look, I want to put forth an idea. Instead of building a raft or
That's a genius idea. Fuck you.
Or a homemade jetpack or a time machine, we need to build a Kozarev mirror. Have you heard about the Kozarev mirror?
No.
There were scientists that
Is this the mirror that's in the box? It's all mirrored inside of
that's
it.
That's
the devil's toy box that we've
okay.
used on investigations. Okay. This is kind of a similar idea, though, because it's the same premise with mirrors and them affecting spatial awareness and possibly hinting at something interdimensional. But scientists took a spiraled mirrored surface, and they made it big enough to where it was a room. Basically, someone sits in a chair and you're inside this thing and it rotates around you. And they did experiments with it, and people started getting senses of dread and weird feelings and weird sensations. And then they started hearing voices that they were actually communicating with. And while these experiments were going on, weird lights started appearing above the labs where they were.
What the hell?
Yeah, we need to do a deep dive into this Kozarev mirror story, because it's bizarre, and you can find plans for these online and make your own.
You heard
No
that.
way.
we gotta cut this off.
Yeah.
Let's do research on that and get back together in a few weeks.
And we can discuss the Cossarev
this
story. And
yes,
I doubt we'll have one built. It's an undertaking. You have to have a little bit of money to do something like that.
Yeah,
but,
you gotta hire NASA to
but
build them.
yeah, but I'm not opposed to
Mirrors.
trying to build one at some point, because there are plans, and you can just go and buy the stuff at Lowe's, from what I hear.
Can you imagine being the guy at Lowe's buying 62 stand-up mirrors?
Damn man, what's this? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's just a project.
Follow us. All right,
I'm a
guys.
fashion model.
Yes. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments. Appreciate all the support and everything everybody gives us. Let us know what parts of this you liked. Let us know what parts you don't or that you dislike, so I can go further on that.
And keep doing it.
And keep doing it.
And ideas.
And ideas, yeah.
Ideas, if you got some, or if there's something especially local to Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, a legend or a haunting or anything like that, let us know. We'll look into it.
Haunted places.
Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be cool
Yes.
to
We
get more of those.
There's the urban legend ones, but a lot of those we just get by word of mouth.
Yeah.
So if you know of something, let us know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Appreciate it, guys. Like and subscribe for us. Share with your friends. And we will see you next week.
And if you hate us, share with your enemies.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Hate like is still a like.
Yeah. Thank you.